Welcome to Exiles, a Gospel of Mark podcast. We are coming to you from Grace Church in Erie, Pennsylvania, where we're taking what we learn about ancient truths and the person of Jesus and applying them to our everyday lives. You can check out whoisgrace.com/Mark for the sermon and resources that we're using for our conversation. We want to thank you for joining us today. If the tone of the voice sounds a little deeper than usual, Danielle, this is not Danielle.
She's not sick.
On a very bad day. I'm Derek. I'm one of the pastors at Grace, and happy to be hosting today in Danielle's stead, even though we're hoping that she feels better. Here joined with these wonderful people that are regulars on this podcast, and I'm honored to be in your presence today. Sarah, you said you're having a whole vibe today, so welcome to.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're not just going to do a stream of consciousness.
No,
that would be bad.
It'd be interesting.
I mean,
no. If you once I start, I can't stop. So let's
keep going. All right.
Keep going.
So our we like to do a little introduction, little opener, and we're talking about Pastor Scott's sermon from this past week, and his opener was a kind of a Star Wars tribute to the opener of Star Wars, and so we're going to play on that and talk about our favorite Star Wars character, or if you're too Christian for Star Wars, favorite Lord of the Rings character, or Chronicles of Narnia, or fill in the whatever. All right? So who wants to start? What's your favorite Star Wars character, Lord of the Rings character, if you're too Christian?
Can you be too Christian for Star Wars?
I mean,
you can.
What is this force that they're talking about?
Like,
Is
I grew
it
up
demonic?
with Harry Potter. Like, I get...
No. Thou shalt not be named. So I'm Mike. I'm one of the pastors here at Grace. I'm not like a sci-fi fantasy, and I know that's even the wrong genre terminology, but
wow.
So send your hate mail. But I like Boba Fett's pretty cool. He's got the get up, so I'll go with that.
Okay, all right. Yeah, great.
I'm getting looks. In here.
Sarah, you're a big Star Wars
Hi,
junkie,
Sarah McCosco. I have nothing to offer. I have not seen any of them.
All right.
Not even.
That's actually worse.
No, I know. I have
none of them.
None of them.
So all of the bajillion Star Wars.
Zip.
Lord of the Rings.
Nada.
Sarah.
I have not.
That's actually concerning.
Yeah.
I have not seen any of the Harry Potters. I have not seen any. Nothing. I have nothing.
So
I am familiar with them. Obviously, they're very popular, but I don't even have a character.
So is it a sci-fi thing, or you don't like sci-fi? Is that not your deal?
I don't think I'm against it. I just don't think, like, when I sit down to watch a movie, I'm not like, oh, let's watch Star Wars today, or let's watch Lord of the Rings. But I hear it's great.
I'm afraid our viewership are going to tank after this intro.
What about you, Steven? I mean, we can go Harry Potter if you want to go that way. I mean, that's
No, I wasn't allowed to watch Harry Potter growing
Oh.
up. Right? Yeah, so that's a
makes
thing.
sense.
I do have a story about that, but I'm not gonna share it right now.
All right.
Excuse me. So I would say that as a boy, I watched them with my dad. I probably connected with Han Solo growing up. But Jar Jar, even though it's the worst of the Star Wars movies, Jar Jar Binks was definitely, I don't know why, but
He was that really awkward.
weird, like big long tongue, and yeah, that guy.
That's the little computer guy?
No, he's
No.
not.
Who's the
That's
little...
Wally.
R2D2.
That's Wally. Different
Okay.
movie.
I mean, he's cool. I mean, if I
E.T.?
had... Okay. He's cute.
You're talking about R2D2?
The little...
Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
Kind of looks like a
okay.
moving trash can on wheels or something like that,
Yeah, that's R2D2.
Basically, yeah.
He didn't talk. He just made noises.
Look at you.
So, I mean, it's not like I don't know. I just... don't
Listening and not watching, I have a look of derision right now.
So, and I think I'm going with Frodo of Lord of the Rings. We might as well just go there. What a great journey, what a great epic tale, that adventure that he went on. So yeah, I like that. He's my favorite.
He was the lead.
Yeah, he was. He was the one entrusted with the ring, and had the That's a good.
Okay.
That's a childhood favorite of mine. The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm a big.
So I will say
book
that,
fan.
just because I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second.
Oh.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, 3 books, 3 movies.
Yeah.
The Hobbit, what in the world were they doing?
I don't know.
1 book, 3 movies.
Yeah, they ruined.
Money.
I couldn't even watch that. I didn't watch The Hobbit.
Yeah, they ruined it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, we all agree with that.
Okay, great. So, Stephen, I want to come back to you. Your parents were here from Scotland.
They were.
And I'm always curious, this may just be me, but I'm always curious when people come from other countries, like their impressions and like how they did and what do they think about the state of things, and did they have any weird
State of
moments?
things?
Yeah, I mean the state of our country, like
State of the state.
a little outside perspective, since we're enmeshed in it.
We didn't get to talk about that a
All
whole
right.
lot. We just agreed not to talk about politics.
Gotcha.
But it's not a sore subject for us.
Yeah.
So we didn't talk a lot about that. But it was a really, really, really good visit. So this was the first time they came to visit us since we moved to Erie. So they used to come every year when we were living in New York and Buffalo.
Yeah.
So this was a really, really good time. But I found out something really interesting.
Okay.
So I'm upstairs in our house, and
Where's this going?
my dad, so granddad is with Marlo.
And Gardy Lou right out there. Yeah.
And Marlo, so Marlo is like Mr. Creative, and he's creating comics right now. And so he's watching Captain Underpants. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great show. Yeah, Captain Underpants. So he's making Captain Underpants comics right now, and he's creating the monsters that Captain Underpants. Captain Underpants always punches him through a black hole. Right,
Okay.
that's how he ends every one of his comics. So,
Didn't know where that was
Lots
going.
going
but
on.
yeah.
spoiler alert. But one of the monsters he created was the Toot monster.
Because you were underpants?
That monster's in my house.
The monsters in my house, yeah, for sure.
The Toot monster. Okay.
And so he's with Granddad, and Granddad is writing. So he's the one writing the storyline.
Okay.
Marlo's drawn out. So he's like, he says Toot monster, and my dad is like, the what? And there were so many variations of the word toot. But my dad had no idea what a toot monster was because they don't use the word toot in Scotland
At all.
And so he's like, "Did you say horn?"
No.
Oh, so my dad's like,
okay.
my dad's
Yeah,
like,
no,
"What, the horn monster?" Like, when you beat the car horn.
I mean, kind of. Yeah.
He had no idea that toot meant other things.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's great.
And it was
Yeah.
I could have came down, but I let it go for like 10 minutes just because I was upstairs
Did
laughing.
you press record
It
on
was
your
great.
phone?
I did it, but it was amazing.
Oh my! All right, working through the meaning of toot.
So is he going to take it back with him and use
Take
it?
what back?
The word toot.
The word
Oh,
toot to Scotland.
And-
He might
and take
I
it
mean,
to
we
Scotland and use
appropriated
it?
Gardy Lou, so
I'll let you know. Yeah, you don't use it correctly, but you use it.
Gardy
Tell
Lou.
him if he does use it in conversation with any of his friends or anything when he goes back, he needs to tell you immediately, and we will bring it back here.
I'll FaceTime him this week.
Thank
and
you.
Yeah. Make
Get
sure.
back to you guys.
I think this
Yeah.
needs.
Transition that, Derek. Good luck.
Yeah. So Scott's sermon on Sunday was fantastic, wasn't it, guys?
It was, yes.
Yeah, we had a chance to
Very
check
good.
that out, and really cool. Let me just do a quick recap, and then you guys can kind of comment on any parts of it that you felt were particularly helpful before we get into our conversation for today. So his big idea was that the steps you take reveal who you are following. And we found out early on in Scott's sermon that he has a strange habit of watching people walk.
Creep.
For those that don't know, he was a physical therapist before he was a pastor, and so he used this word gait, G-A-I-T, as the way that somebody walks, and you can tell a lot about somebody by the way they walk or whatever. So anyway, he talked about the 4 gates of grace. And again, it was kind of a real good physical therapy kind of sermon with these good parallels. So he said, get off your feet. And so sometimes it's important for us to just spend time with God. And then he said, walk with purpose. So your purpose is your calling as a child of God. That's your primary purpose in life. The third one was to embrace the uns. And so there was a really beautiful healing story here with somebody who had leprosy, and was an untouchable, in that society. So the question was, who are the uns in your life? And then the final one was comply with Christ, which is kind of like a spiritual rehabilitation model where he's just saying, hey, it's important that when he tells you to do something, you do it exactly, the way that he says. So let's talk about the message just in general. What impacted you? What were some just initial takeaways before we go a little deeper today?
I really enjoyed how he opened up the message, the compelling nature, like the storytelling nature. He drew me in. I'm always late to the game because I'm a little bit of a Christian rebel, right? We can unpack that months from now, right? We don't have enough time to unpack that. But I started watching The Chosen. It's interesting. It's interesting. I have my thoughts. I am enjoying it. I have my thoughts, but I'm enjoying it. But I'm in that headspace right now. So the way that Scott kind of opened it, sort of like the theatrical nature of it really drew me in. So that was creating parallels there.
That's cool.
And it aligns with Mark is a story.
Yeah.
It's a gospel, yes, but like it's a story. The whole thing is a story, and for him to just kind of read it that way. It was compelling. It was fresh. It drew me in to a passage I've read plenty of times before, and I think we lose that sometimes with some of the.
Yes.
There's like the epistles and the letters are like X, Y, Z, and that's good, but like the Gospels are stories about Jesus, and so that was like a good reminder, refresher.
It's always interesting to think about the fact that, all these gospel writers are storytellers, and so there's things that they're including, there's things that they're leaving out. Like we're not getting a full every second of every Jesus' whole life. They're intentionally including things and seeing storylines go and, all that kind of, it's fascinating to think about,
It's not a biography.
That's right.
It's a story.
It's a story.
And that has implications and
And just to be clear, it's a story that really happened in history.
Yes.
So it's not a fairy tale story.
Right.
And since we weren't there, I think there's an appreciation for being able to have a visual in your mind as you read the stories, because we can't visualize that because we weren't there. So I
Right.
appreciate that very much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. He also had a quote in there that we've worked through recently that talks about just the Word of God as three things. It's a picture, but if you read it right, it also at some point becomes a mirror where it shows you insight into yourself. And then as you kind of progress, it becomes a window through which you see the world. It provides you a worldview that you can look out now, and you're seeing everything through the lens of Scripture. And so I thought that was a really good thing to bring into this. So let's talk about some of our topics for the day, and questions of the day are going to deal with a few of these things that Scott brought up. But the first thing I want to talk about is this idea that you know that Jesus can do something, but you hope that he's willing to do it. So the leper that was healed knew that Jesus could do something, and he hoped that he would do it. And then when Jesus responded, he says, I am willing to do that. So let's talk about, just somebody add different words to that and describe it maybe a little differently than I just described it. But and then I just wonder, do we have stories of our own lives about that happening? Of we know Jesus can do something, but is he willing to do it? And then what do we do with that if he's not? So anyone want to start off that train and interact with that? I know we're going deep right away. Come on, Sarah.
I have so many feelings. I feel like there's a pattern here with the podcast. I just have all these feelings and I can't spit them out. I go through this. Let's see if I can do this. When I go to Jesus about something that I feel that I need or I want, if I'm going to be honest, I feel guilty asking because I get in my head on, is this what I need? Am I asking for the wrong thing? How do I know if it's the right thing to ask for? Am I missing something that he wants me to see and I'm not seeing it? So I go through a whole bunch of different things when I go to him about something. So I resonated with the leper, like, if you're willing. And so when I go and I ask him or I bring something up with him, I'm like, but please, like, do what you need, what you think is best. But these are my thoughts, and I'm trying to dissect them. That's how I feel when I go to him and I ask him something.
And I'll affirm that's a fantastic approach.
Agreed.
Like, you can certainly overdo it and spin your wheels, but like, that's a very humble approach.
Let me see what I'm supposed to see.
And you're not asking God for things he doesn't know that you want to ask for. You're not doing it for his benefit, but you're coming at, there's a humility to that and a recognition, if you're willing, because you're the sovereign being who knows what I actually want and need. That's a fantastic way to approach that.
And I think it's also important that I say, I will say, okay, this is what I want, but will you please make sure that I see what I'm actually supposed to
Yes.
want?
It's good.
And then I think it's very important to have that mindset, because you may see things like, well, I think I need this, or I want this, or this is what I'm seeing. But I think it's very important to make sure that you actually ask him, but is this right? What am I actually supposed to see? And please make sure that I see it.
Now, have you always been that way?
No. No.
What changed?
So moons ago, I had started a dog rescue called Hope. Long story short, the stress of taking that on, the things I was seeing and the things I was encountering to the innocent creatures. Everyone knows how much I love dogs and animals. So anyway, it broke me in many, many ways. And so there were a lot of things within the rescue that I was dealing with or that we needed. And it kind of, my moments, my years in Hope completely changed my relationship with Christ. I was 100% dependent on him to survive and for that rescue to survive. So that changed everything. So then probably was when it was. So that was like 6 years ago or something.
That's good.
Probably longer than that. I don't know. 2014.
I think part of the thing that's important to keep in mind as we think about this deep topic is that we are children and God is a loving Father.
Yes.
And so, Sarah, I think when you come that way, I mean, I think it pleases the Father's heart to have a child who would ask humbly and who would defer to his will and those sorts of things. In the same way, that as a father, if my kids are coming to ask me for something, I would prefer that attitude, from them is to kind of defer, especially when they were littler. All along recognizing that it's a loving father, not a vice principal that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so a loving father who says, if you ask for bread, am I going to give you a stone? If so, I mean, God kind of demonstrates his love. It also doesn't mean that the answer is always going to be yes.
You got it.
Right. And so just in the same way, a loving father, if a child comes and says, I want, a pound of Red Hots to eat before bed,
not a good idea.
a loving father is going to go, no, because I love you. It's not because I hate you. It's because I love you that no is. So I'm not willing to grant, back to our question, I'm not willing to grant you this thing that you're requesting, but it's not out of hatred for you. It's out of love for you.
And trust me that what is coming that you actually need is exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Yep.
And is it fair to say too, because I feel the tension if we take it just a little further down the road, and I think about my own kids, and we're not quite there yet because my kids are so young, but I guess with Alex, our older 23-year-old, we got him when he was 17. There's not been many seasons, but I think about my childhood growing up, and there's things that are good to ask for. There's nothing wrong to receive them, but I know at times my dad has seen something in me, and he's not intervened because he's loving, because he knows that I need to go through something in order to build that character or to draw something out of me. And so I feel that tension. Yeah. Even, and now this is a particularly unique situation with leprosy, but I think there are those situations in life where God can go, I know you need to go through this. Yeah. And it might actually even pain me to watch you go through this, but I know who you're going to be on the back end. And I know that's a real tension to walk in. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's not necessarily the rule. It's probably more so the what's the word I'm looking for? The exception. Thank you. But I do know that those times have been true in my life where God has allowed me to walk through a hard season because he knows better for me. And on the backside of it, it's been really, 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 really beneficial. The thing that I'll add is, and I'm glad that you brought it up, Sarah, I just want to say I really appreciate the relational nature of the relationship you have with God. Like, I didn't know this about you until we started this podcast. And I just really, I'm always encouraged and challenged by how you approach God. So thank you for that.
Good.
But I feel like I was a kid that grew up in the church and I'm plagued with the right and wrong thing to do.
Ditto.
And so I'm always like, God, is this the right thing to ask for? And at times that can paralyze me. So that was my initial response.
That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to say, I think that the more that we get to know God, and let's go with that relationship thing. The more that we get to know God and His heart, the more we know the right things to ask for.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, the more we know Him.
Yes.
And so we know what He wants. And so it's almost like just like a person. The more you get to know them, there's a symbiotic thing that goes on of like we're kind of thinking for each other. And so I think one of the reasons that people often feel frustrated with God is because they only come and ask Him for things when something goes wrong.
Right.
And then it's like I'm not in relationship with Him every single day. And so when I come and ask and He says no, I'm ticked off because I don't understand His heart.
And then you don't talk to him for
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the value of asking with that humble posture, because as you ask, you enter in a relationship with Jesus. The Spirit is going to make your heart look more like Jesus, but that's the slow, eventual process that changes what you're asking for and how you do it. So, I don't know. I guess don't be afraid to ask God for what you want. Do it, But that's entering into the relationship piece, not just when you need Him. And that's what sets the stage.
So let's move from the theoretical to the practical. Okay, this is a. Oh yeah, crap. So part of this conversation with God is understanding what He's willing to do and what He's not willing to do, and half the battle is understanding what He's saying in our requesting. How have you listening to God is hard. It's much easier to pray a list to God or to come to God and say, here's the 3 things that I need from you right now or whatever. But if prayer is a conversation, part of a conversation is talking and part of a conversation is listening. So how have you guys found practically ways to listen to God and to understand that it's Him and to hear His voice? Because I don't know about you, I don't get audible voices from God. So there are other...
Can I guess that Sarah does?
No, I feel like the biggest question is with people on the listening end, what am I listening for?
That's good.
So I think it would be fascinating to hear, how do each of you hear God?
Great.
Go.
So the first ingredient to that is silence and solitude. And like, if you've been coming to Grace for a minute, we keep saying that. And honestly, it's probably not something I've really solved, I think, for myself until 6 months ago. And I've been a pastor for almost 2 years. So if you don't have it figured out, you're good. But I get up in the morning and the first thing I do some yoga to stretch out. Send your emails.
You do yoga?
I do, yeah, to get limbered up.
How long has this been going on? The yoga.
A couple years
this
now.
Is great.
It's not of the devil, it turns out. But anyways,
you have a mat and everything?
Yeah.
Special socks, or you go barefoot?
Barefoot. Whoa.
Okay.
Hey,
back off. He's talking about listening from God.
But so I get up at 5:30 in the morning because my kids are almost 4 and almost 2, and I'll do just enough to kind of limber up and wake up. And I used to go work out, and then I'd do my chair time, but I switched it because I'm like, no, then I'm fresh and I'm not tired and I'm not exhausted.
Yeah.
God needs to get my best. It's silent, ain't nobody else awake, and I can sit there, read scripture. So I'm setting the conditions to hear from God. The way I most often hear from Him, I think, it sounds conversational prayer. I will just talk to God like I'm talking to someone, or just voicing my feelings or thoughts.
Do you do it out loud or silently?
I do it silently, but I have done it out loud before, and it's the only way I can describe it is I just get thoughts pop into my head, or all of a sudden I find myself on a line of thinking that I've never thought before, and I pause and go, I've never thought of it that way before. And I think that's just the Holy Spirit interacting with me and helping to kind of change. And that's the best way I can articulate, I think, how my most often way I kind of converse with God instead of just having it a one-way street.
Great. Do you test those out? Do you what if there's something that you're what would you use as kind of a plumb line to go? Is this my own thought, or is this actually from God?
My wife is probably the primary. God speaks to us through His Spirit, His Word, and His community. And so, obviously, if it's contradicting Scripture, but if there's an alignment with what I'm reading or what I know in Scripture, if there's any sort of affirmation in my community, especially my wife, then that's usually goes, oh, okay, I see what you're saying here.
You got one?
That's really good. I also have a wife who I would. I wasn't a period. I also have a wife who, she serves as my discernment meter, and it's been so helpful, so helpful over the years. And so she too will become a person that I will bounce things off of. She's usually very straightforward. You guys know Nicole. She doesn't beat around the bush. But for me, so I'm gonna be honest and just say I have struggled over the years, one with praying, because I'm a big God sovereignty guy. So I really struggle with praying at times. I just do, because I'm just like, well, God, you're God. Yeah, what's the point? If I'm being honest and candid. So that's been part of my journey. And I've also had some pretty negative charismatic experiences. So like relying on feelings feels like a real hurdle to me. So if anybody's listening and they can relate, you're not alone. So I spend a lot of time in the Word, believing that the Holy Spirit will illuminate that text to me. I love to spend time in the Psalms simply because it just paints a beautiful picture of the character of God and the steadfastness of God. So I would say I still struggle, even to this day, to like sit and we talked about this in the last podcast, and this is why I appreciate you so much, Sarah, is like your conversational nature with God. Like I really struggle with that because it feels too subjective to me. But I'm not saying it's wrong. It's a struggle. It's a hurdle for me. I like to lean on the objective and that which I know is true. So that has been, throughout my years, that has been a real anchor for me in every season.
Yeah.
Good seasons and bad.
And I think it's a really good answer. I mean, I don't think you have to apologize for that answer.
No,
Just say the main way I
so
hear
transparent.
God's voice is through the scriptures.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a right answer, and I think that for me, that is definitely my main way that I hear from God is just through the reading and study of the scriptures. And I feel like I realize that's not everybody's like main way. But obviously that needs to be the final say, whether it's your main way or not. Everything needs to be kind of held up against that. I would say just super, super practically for me, I've gone on a journey from thinking that my mental wandering, it's hard for me to tame my brain when it comes time to pray. I'm thinking a million thoughts. And I've come through being frustrated with that, and going, I need to reel that in. And so if a thought comes about, Aiden, this or that at school, I forgot to fill out her form, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to pray to God, and that's the thing that pops in.
Real.
And instead of getting frustrated with that and trying to tamp it down, just go, I got to get rid of that. I got to get rid of that. I got to get rid of that, and focus on God. I've decided that that's actually part of the praying process, and that may be the way that God is actually prompting me to pray. So if that pops in, instead of trying to tamp down the mental wanderings, I follow them in prayer. And I say, Aiden, form, whatever, God, I want to lift up Aiden to you right now. I don't know what she's up to. I don't know what she's doing, but for whatever reason, I'm going to believe you brought her into my mind, even though this is like a to-do list, that she's in my mind for a purpose. So I'm going to follow that and pray for that. And so whatever those things are, and I have found that is a much more effective way to focus in the end, is to commit those to prayer instead of trying to get rid of them because they keep popping back up.
Because it is almost more of a distraction to try to push them down than it is to actually just talk about them.
Because then you start focusing on that. Right?
And it's a journey of guilt and shame. Like, oh my gosh, I can't focus on God. How bad am I? Yeah. And it's more, well, what if they are? Yeah. You can go, God leading you to pray for these things that are good and beautiful in your life. Obviously, your daughter, Yeah, I love that.
That's
you're walking in with a list. Yeah. You're walking in with things, but then you're also going to let the Spirit
let the Spirit lead. Yeah, that's a spontaneous.
It's a wandering prayer.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Great.
I am blown. My mind is blown. Let me to rephrase.
All right.
Wow, thank you.
Good.
I needed that. That was something I very much needed.
Good.
Very much.
Well, we spent a lot of time on that. I want to talk about one other thing, and we'll kind of just deal with it pretty quickly here. Scott made a statement in his sermon where he said, partial obedience is disobedience. Okay?
Oh yeah, let's deal with this one really quickly.
Real quick.
This should be a quick one.
So he's coming from a physical therapy perspective, and it was under his fourth point where he was talking about complying with Christ, this spiritual rehabilitation, that obedience. When you're rehabbing, when a PT tells you to rehab something and gives you a list of things to do, you can't just do part of those things. You have to do the whole thing because every one of them serves a purpose. So let me just ask this question: why is half obeying concerning to God? Why is half obeying God a problem?
I'd like to go.
Go.
Please.
Right off the bat, for me, if he has, like with the whole rehab thing, that Scott thing, if a doctor looks at you and says, I need you to do all these and you'll be healed and everything will be fine and you'll be so much better, and you go, no, thank you. You do not trust your doctor. And by partially obeying Jesus, you are not trusting him.
That's good. So it's a trust
It's
issue.
a trust thing. You do not have faith.
That's really good.
And that's all. It's something that's right there. That's all I have.
I think it's a heart posture.
Yes.
Something is lacking. I mean, it's what in your sermon a couple weeks ago about baptism, when you're kind of talking about people come to Christ and like, we're going to do this, and then but they don't want to get baptized, and you're saying you want all of this from Jesus, but the very first step of obedience you don't want to do. What does that communicate? That's a heart that's not postured, that might not be all in. We wouldn't want that, whether we're doctors or in any other form of life. Like, why would God desire half or like picking off of a menu of the things that you want to do? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, man.
I don't necessarily have a ton to add. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so good that, and I thought about this particular passage where, 1 Samuel 15, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the voice of the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And you think about, I think you guys hit it perfectly. Like, what is God actually after? Mm-hmm. What's he after? Well, he's after our hearts. Yeah. He's after our faith, our trust. And so he's not giving us things to do to check off a list. He's giving us things to do, number one, because he knows they're best for us. Yes. Number two, because he wants our hearts. And I think that's a great answer. And I think this was a great sermon to remind us of these important things. The steps you take reveal who you are following. And so, any other like practical takeaways from either our conversation here today or from the message itself that you're saying, again, super practical, that you're going to walk away going, hey, I'm going to try that, or that thing that we talked about, or that thing that Scott talked about, I'm going to try that one. Anybody got one? We were theoretical today.
We got a little bit practical. So let's get a little bit more practical.
Yeah, let's get a little bit more practical.
I think the discipleship question, right, was how does
this picture of Jesus
compel me to live differently? And even just the idea of uns, that just all the unloved, untouchables, the whatever, and all the many categories that manifests itself today, that was super compelling. And even just like Scott's emotion that you could see coming through as he was preaching that. Who are the uns in my life who I need to actually go out and interact with? And I have no problem if physically or mentally, like those aren't my barriers. But I think for me, it's the people who, not the people who think differently. It's the people who
have a different opinion than you.
No, it's not having. I don't care about a different opinion, but it's those people who they don't want to hear yours and they just want to shout theirs from the mountaintops, and they want to yell their opinion at you. They don't want to listen to yours. And that, to me, that's all right. Then I'm not going to engage. You're not. I'm going to turn around and walk away. No, I need to still. I know it's not a classic untouchable or uncategory, but no, I need to actually still engage, be willing to engage, be willing to maybe just take a verbal face shot and just sit there and listen, and because that's what Jesus did.
Yeah.
And that's what I need to do, because maybe that bridges the gap and opens up potential influence or a conversation. So that was my I guess, that came to mind as I was hearing that.
It's great. Anybody else got a practical?
I think about the. I think I really appreciate how Scott put out the context of the leopard, like the reality of what would have happened when you were diagnosed with leprosy. Like, essentially, it was a death sentence, right? You lost everything, and it's just the reality of Jesus approaching this so whatever it is for you, just with compassion.
Yes.
And that's what I struggle with. I know that there are people in my life. I'm thinking about one person in particular right now, so maybe I need to follow the prompt, right? And I just don't have compassion for that person. I don't. They frustrate me. I have very little patience, and it's years long, lots of relational equity and history. And I just think about the compassion that I don't have towards their story, but how Jesus met this leopard with such compassion when nobody else would, right? It was 50 feet, 100 feet in distance. So that's the practical application I'm going to take away from this, knowing that I have to follow the prompt and probably approach this person. I don't know to what end, but I know that they're definitely an on in my life.
So then you and I, since we both shared, what's a step that we can actually take? Like, okay, we need to approach this person or these people. Like, I'm thinking compassion, I think, is a perfect word. I need to pray for them. And some of these people live around me, and like, great, we have Pray for 8 going on, right? Like, I need to actually sit down and pray by name with this face in my mind for this person, because again, God knows how I feel, but that's interacting with God, and that's how the Spirit can hopefully change my heart. So like, I need to pray for this specific person is how I need to, I don't know, yeah.
Is it strange to ask in prayer, ask him to intentionally put you in a position with that person that you
fantastic.
have to actually have action?
You want to pray that one?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I already know. I probably need to put myself in a position.
Uncomfortable. Or like just, pray, okay, when you feel I'm ready for this situation to happen, but when it happens, please make sure that I remember to involve you as well.
That's great.
It's good.
That's
Let him
great.
do it.
Sarah, good job.
Let him do it.
Good job.
Thank you.
Hey, we're gonna wrap this up for today. I think one of the things that I took away from Scott's sermon, it's maybe a little bit just for me, but the healing narratives and the Gospels always get me. Because it always sends me down the path of, I think we have a certain image in our mind of what healing looks like from the unhealthy versions of America in these recent years. And I have to always remind myself, and I see it all the time, so it's shame on me for not, but that God still heals.
Yeah.
And, he still heals people. And it may not be leprosy that's the main thing that we're dealing with in America in 2023, but it may be marriages, it may be anxiety, it may be, it may be relational division and dependencies, right? And it's like God still heals, and I need to trust him to heal, and I need to be an agent of healing for people, and he will still use us in that way. So that's one of my big takeaways from the message. All right, you can go over to, do you have anything? I didn't want to.
No.
All right, you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. You made it with no tears. This was, you were a whole
Guys,
vibe.
just a side note, this leprosy thing really kicked my booty.
Yeah.
It was so sad.
Yeah, you just had empathy, right?
I did. I just did a lot of crying this morning. And that's what started it. Thank you, Scott.
Well, thanks for joining us for this podcast today. I realize that it was a very senior pastory one. You'll be back with Danielle's winsome hosting next time, and it'll be fun and funny and quirky and all that. So you can visit whoisgrace.com/Mark for resources around this series. We would love for you to do that. Like and share this podcast. Share it with some friends. That would be awesome. And you can also submit a question over at the website. Let us know how you're feeling about the podcast and give us suggestions of stuff you'd like us to talk about. And I want to just thank you for joining us today. Thank you guys for co-hosting.
Did great.
And peace out, everybody.
Bye.
Watch out for the toot monster.
Oh.